basically spend the money on welfare, the NHS, and if this is coming, which justifies
that both of them could be moving in the next couple of months coming into the budget.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. The budget.
Her hands dirty still wasn't a problem. Planting roses named after her in the centre's garden. Just how important mind, body and spirit are for recovery is her big message right now.
Very nice to meet you. What's your name?
But also you could hear a subtle plea for maybe more understanding for her and her family and others going through difficult.
You make it a home, we keep it warm and working.
At what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines then with the political commentator Adam Bolton and the former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. Lovely to see both of you and welcome on what is an extraordinary day, to be fair. So to the front pages then, let's take a look, shall we? To start with then, the Metro, picturing Chancellor Rachel Reeves crying at Prime Minister's questions after Tuesday's welfare bill vote. The headline, tears and jeers for Starmer. The Sun says that just before the tears, the Chancellor said to her colleagues, "I'm under so much pressure." The Eye suggests her future in number 11 could now be in doubt. Just before the tears, is crying at Prime Minister's questions after Tuesday's welfare bill vote. The headline, tears and jeers for Starmer. The Sun says that just before the tears, the Chancellor said to her colleagues, "I'm under so much pressure." The Eye suggests her future in number 11 could now be in doubt. The Express describes it as a day of drama which has left the Chancellor on the brink. The Times says she's now battling to convince doubters that she is up to the job. According to the Financial Times, the Chancellor's distress appeared to trigger a sharp drop in the pound and government bonds. The Telegraph to doubters that she is up to the job. According to the Financial Times, the Chancellor's distress appeared to trigger a sharp drop in the pound and government bonds. The Telegraph too leads with the effect on the markets and that picture of her in tears, as does the front page of tomorrow's Guardian, tears and turmoil, their headline. While the Daily Mail asked just what it was that triggered those tears and that market turmoil. Freak show is the simple headline for The Star, reporting on today's verdict. The Daily Mail asked just what it was that triggered those tears and that market turmoil. Freak show is the simple headline for The Star, reporting on today's verdicts against the rapper Sean Diddy Combs, guilty of offences related to prostitution, but not guilty on charges concerning sex trafficking and racketeering. So let's bring in Adam and Anita. Welcome to both of you. And, whoever wants to kick off, look at the picture on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The Chancellor looking miserable is how Kemi Badenoch. It's more than that. The tears are rolling down her face.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary moment. I was watching PMQs live when I suddenly just kind of got a glimpse of her face, and she did not look how she normally looks. I mean, she looked devastated. She looked as though she had just been crying at the very beginning, and then it became apparent that she continued to cry throughout PMQs. It was deeply uncomfortable to watch, and actually, obviously it's very heartbreaking to watch someone go through that level of anguish on the front bench. But the visible signs of a chance of doing so, I can understand why markets thought there was something going on, and certainly that there was a resignation on the cards, whether at the behest of Reeves, who, as you indicated there, is under and feels under an awful lot of pressure, or if they're the fallout from the cataclysmic failure of the handling of the welfare bill. And people keep calling it a U-turn. A U-turn would be easy. This was not a U-turn. This was a multi-way car, multi-story, multi-car pile-up of a car crash. And so it could be the fallout from that. obviously, you also have number 10 of Treasury saying that it was a personal matter. No one quite knows why, but it was shocking to witness.
Yeah, I'm thinking things about it. It wasn't a moment. It was an extended period. And piecing it together, what we understand is that Rachel Reeves had an argument with an unspecified senior member of the government. She then, together, what we understand is that Rachel Reeves had an argument with an unspecified senior member of the government. She then, before, as she was coming to the chamber, she had an exchange with the Speaker, who had pulled her up yesterday for rolling his eyes when he told her off for giving too strong answers. She then sat down. One female woman saw that she was unhappy and reached over to comfort her. She sat down. Prime Minister turns to her very, very briefly and then basically ignores her for the rest of question time. And that, I think, is a really striking thing, because what it looked like was a couple who just had a major tiff.
Well, the Mail Online originally earlier today said that she'd had
for the rest of question time. And that, I think, is a really striking thing, because what it looked like was a couple who just had a major tiff.
Well, the Mail Online originally earlier today said that she'd had a row with the Prime Minister before.
Yeah, but I mean, it looked like a couple, because of course, I mean, I'm not suggesting anything untoward.
Have you ever seen anything like this in the House of Commons?
They have
today said that she'd had a row with the Prime Minister before.
Yeah, but I mean, it looked like a couple, because of course, I mean, I'm not suggesting anything untoward.
Have you ever seen anything like this in the House of Commons?
They have been very, very close, you know, on policy terms, and it looked like they had fallen out. And he, you know, seemed quite light-hearted at one stage. As she's crying behind him, he starts talking about Arsenal in 1989 or something. So it looked callous, and you wondered why she was there. And they've come up with this explanation saying it was a personal matter, but they've given no further details. Now, one can understand their sensitivity on that. But, you know, a lot of people wonder if the personal matter is about her relationship with Keir Starmer in terms of them having been such close professional colleagues. Yeah. And, you know, the fact that actually the person who picked up on it, first of all, was Kemi Badenoch, who could see she was upset, been such close professional colleagues. Yeah. And, you know, the fact that actually the person who picked up on it, first of all, was Kemi Badenoch, who could see she was upset, referred to her being upset, and then asked the obvious question, is she still going to be there in 5 years' time? Which, in the past, Starmer has gone out of his way to say, yes, she is, and he didn't say it. So, you know, it just looked really strange.
Yes, well, he has said, this is Sir Keir Starmer, has said she will be Chancellor for a very long time to come. You know, whether that is the endorsement to the end of the Parliament, I don't know.
Not, is it?
Well, I'm not going to intrude on her privacy by talking to you. This is Starmer talking to BBC's Nick Robinson in an interview scheduled to air on Friday. So he won't go that far, but she will be Chancellor for a very long time to come. It is not an endorsement, as we heard in January, as Kemi Badenoch pointed out, that she would remain Chancellor for the Parliament. In the meantime, the fallout continues. The Financial Times talks about the impact both on gilts, government borrowing, and on the pound slumping. And in a sense, this protects her, because if she is linked to the markets because of her sticking to fiscal rules, then does that keep her in post for longer, do you think?
Well, I think there's two questions here, which is, number one, like, losing your Chancellor is not like losing any other minister, because the strategy of the Chancellor is a strategy of the government. So I think that in some ways, interpreting the gilt and pound slump is a lot about, like, does this government have credibility? I think part of that obviously does center with Reeves as the kind of self-styled Iron Chancellor. But ultimately, losing a Chancellor, whether because they resign or the Starmer pushes them or because of the fallout from the welfare bill, all of which indicates there is something not to be trusted at the heart of the political project. So I don't think I necessarily would see it as an endorsement of Reeves, but more as a sign of like, OK, well, what next? Because it's very doubtful that you would end up, particularly with someone who is tougher on fiscal rules than Rachel Reeves, but certainly just implies the entire economic strategy would potentially be in shambles.
But on the other hand, the papers are taking that line, or some of them are. The FT quotes a fund manager from Fidelity International saying investors were fearful that if the Chancellor were replaced, there was a greater risk that the government's fiscal rules would be changed, ditched, implying even bigger deficits and issuance. And then the front page of the Mail, their political editor, Jason Groves, who's very shrewd, he says the pound fell sharply and the government's borrowing costs jumped as rumours swirled that she could be heading for the exit, and this is the key line, taking Labour's remaining fiscal credibility with her. And that it did look like she was on the way out, although it's been denied subsequently during PMQs, and the markets reacted. And here you've got, very different sources, the Mail and the Financial Times, saying it's because the markets trust her, and frankly, they don't trust the Labour Party after its performance yesterday, or indeed Keir Starmer, to stay strong as...
So is a feeling now the tail's wagging the dog, as in the backbenchers feel rebellious, emboldened and somewhat in control of policymaking. But in terms of her personally, does she need to come out now and speak to people? Does she need to explain the question at the heart of the Daily Mail's front page, what or who caused the tears, in order for her to salvage any political future for herself?
Well, I think that ultimately it seems she has not walked. If she's not going to walk, then there has to be a moment where she's able to be on the front foot. I personally would not advise her to go out tomorrow, for instance, on anything, because this story is a 3-day pile up already, and the more you talk about it, the more you keep this story going. But I think there is a kind of recess is coming. It's not there. It's not here yet. But it feels like there's a moment for her to sort of reset some of this coming into the budget. But I think, Anna, you get at the heart of the matter, which is the reason why people are asking the question about what happens next, which is the Parliamentary Party has very clearly shown that they will not put up with spending cuts. And therefore, there are only two things on the table: tax rises and a change to the fiscal rules. And it's clear, well, to me, from my sources, that several of the cabinet think the fiscal rules are for the chop. Backbenchers think, mostly tax rises, but also fiscal rules are for the chop. She's one of the few people kind of holding firm on that. But it seems after these past few days that both of them could be moving in the next couple of months coming into the budget.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. The budget, we're expecting 1 October. So she's got to deliver that. And in a sense, if they're sticking to the same economic policy, it's got to be her who delivers it. You would only get rid of her, if you like, if they were going to change policy quite dramatically, as happened with Norman Lamont and Ken Clarke, although they're very black in the 1990s. But I do agree with you, Anna, the point you make, this is the Daily Mail, which is, whatever people think of it, one of the sharpest newspapers on the block. And it's saying what or who caused the tears that sparked turmoil in the markets. If there is some personal tragedy which justifies her being upset, they really need to give some explanation of that, because otherwise people are going to think that
if we look at the Times now, Reeves battles doubters after PM spooks the markets. We're in spooks the markets territory already. Now we're also, like last summer, sitting, waiting for a budget to come in the autumn, where we're, debating what harm will happen to people and their finances through taxation, or whether the government's borrowing will go up, costing taxpayers money in the future if they change the fiscal rules. But, we're in the dwelling stages for months again, aren't we? I
mean, the underlying issue is that, and again, this is coming out in some of the economists' writing, the underlying issue is whether Keir Starmer has been shown to be weak, that he will not stick to his plans to restore economic stability, because the heart of Labour is soft left and basically spend the money on welfare, the NHS, and if necessary, borrow or tax. And most economic experts would say that that would be a disastrous cause for the economy and things would spiral out of control. But the fear is that if Reeves goes, who's been the symbol of that, then that's the way the economy is going to go. And that's why people are so upset. And what's interesting, I think, is you've got, as I read out, you've got the Daily Mail and the FT, as it were, taking Reeves' side in this. But you've got the Times and the Telegraph pointing the finger of blame, basically almost saying, Chancellor crying in public, that's going to damage confidence in the economy. And as Anita was saying earlier on, I think the newspapers are treading very carefully because she is Britain's first woman Chancellor and people don't want to be accused of misogyny about, the behaviour of a woman weeping.
And just the full quote on that interview to be aired on Friday of Sir Keir Starmer. She'll be Chancellor by the time this is broadcast, is the first thing he said. She'll be Chancellor for a very long time to come. Now that's actually quite cutting when you hear it like that, isn't it? I mean, whether he meant like that or not.
Why is he doing an interview that's delayed 48 hours or whatever? I mean, it's more very poor communications.
It's interesting that I think I've seen some write-ups from journalists, not on the front pages, that are specifically about Starmer's handling of this. I have some sympathy in that I have been sat on the floor of that chamber, and it is very hard to see and hear things, and she was kind of directly here. So it's likely that it took him a while
let's look at the Guardian picture while you're talking, because you see that. But anyway, do continue.
But it is quite hard to see, so he may not have spotted. And even I, watching on camera, I was like, is she just looked sort of tired at first, and then you sort of know she's visibly weeping. So it's quite hard to see when you're doing that. But the energy, the feeling that even after, when he must have realised at some point there wasn't a kind of hand on the shoulder, there wasn't anything of that description. And I think, Adam, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to the cause. If it was a kind of straightforward personal matter, there's no reason why you wouldn't sit out PMQs, because the reason why it's important the Chancellor was there is because the government needed to exhibit strength because of what had happened, and they knew that she would be in the firing line. So, when there's a big immigration week, you have, Yvette Cooper, your Home Secretary, next to you. It's quite an important part of the PMQ dynamic, which is you pass papers, you say things to the PM, but also you stand up and you say, I will not be cowed by you, the opposition, as you yell, in your direction.
We could talk more. I mean, it was a truly extraordinary moment in the history of the Commons and PMQs, certainly. And we'll wait to see how it plays out. But we do need to take a quick break. Lots more still to come. Could accessing NHS treatment soon become easier? That and more after the break.